So we're here at Books for Africa with Pat Plonski, the executive director of the organization. We're so thankful for the opportunity to come out here and talk to you about how you're using your leadership influence as a force for good.
Well, thank you. Glad to have you here at our warehouse and happy to be on your show, Jeff.
Yeah, as you can see, we got a busy operation behind us today. Books are being packed and shipped out to Africa, so great to be able to see the scene behind us and hear the noise and the activity that's going along with it. So I wanted to start a little bit with your origin story. So your founder, Tom, mentioned that you're a simple company doing simple things, but what is the profound impact that you're able to have in Africa today?
Well, yes, we are a simple organization. We deliver books to Africa. We are, in fact, the world's largest shipper of books to Africa, shipping over 35 million books over 34 and a half years and serving every single country on the African continent. So it's a huge impact. But the mission is quite focused, quite simple, to provide books. And so within that simple mission lies all the complexity of how do you get those books to those places, and how do you make sure that you get the right books to the right people? How are you financing it? Finding new partners, reconnecting with old partners. So there's a lot of complexity within that very simple mission of delivering books.
Yeah, I'm super interested in unpacking that complexity with you today. So we'll get there in just a moment. I did want to talk a little bit more about just your time here in the 20 years that you've been the director. How did you first get started, and then how has the organization grown? And just give us a flyover of the size of the operation today.
Well, our goal is to send 4 million books this year alone. Last year we sent 3.2 million books. And so part of the secret to our success is always seeking to do more, to send more books, to expand on the growth, to try to do it better. So we're doing the same thing, but always trying to do it better, more expansively. And we started, when I started 20 years ago, we were in a small donated warehouse in St. Paul, Minnesota. And, had to take a freight elevator. Every pallet moved, when books were donated, it moved into this basement by this ancient freight elevator. This building was over 100 years old.
Was that a church, if I recall, or a church building?
No, this was a step up from the church. So the church basement's where it started, and then we got this donated warehouse space, and which was nice, but not quite as elaborate as this warehouse that you see behind us now.
Right.
And so it was a very rudimentary operation. And in fact, our warehouse manager here, I joke with him, he and I both worked in that warehouse. And so we know how you can get by with very little. And this is a much more luxuriant warehouse, if I can say that, a lot more capacity. And so when we run into difficulties here, I always say, well, if we could make it work in that Jack's building in St. Paul, we can make it work here.
Yes, and keeping that humility with you the whole way through. And you've got an influx of volunteers. You've got a huge staff. About how many people do you have on staff or that touch your organization as kind of internal stakeholders?
Yeah, there's probably something like 15 employees, some part-time, some full-time, a number of contractors, board 15 to 20, and then thousands of volunteers. Here in Atlanta, something like 8,000 volunteers in any given year, and volunteers all around the world receiving books and donating money and books and everything.
So one of the biggest things that we'd like to really touch on Chat with Leaders is, of course, the leadership journey, the biggest lessons learned, how we can impart that wisdom into the next generation of leaders, especially if they're in the for or nonprofit industry. So you've been at this for about 20 years now. What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned about that leadership over time, and how you kind of shaped your worldviews as that's transpired?
So many lessons learned. I think the biggest lesson, probably, whether you're running a nonprofit or a for-profit, is that easy is good. Easy isn't bad. Try to find the easiest way to get things done, with the understanding that the job has to be done correctly. But if there's an easier way to do things, that's the better way to do it. because it tends to be cheaper. It tends to be easier on staff and on myself and everything. So, don't shy away from the easy ways of doing things, unless the easy way is a shortcut that doesn't deliver what needs to be delivered. High quality books to Africa. But I think in society, a lot of times we say, well, it's got to be hard, and if it's not hard, we're not doing it right. And sometimes things are hard, but sometimes it's like, well, wait, are we making this harder than it needs to be? And so, we managed to run a huge logistical operation all over the globe on 15 employees and donated staff, and donated books. We are one of the few organizations in the world that's managed to do that. Many tried, and the second lesson is because you were able to do it yesterday doesn't mean you're going to be able to do it tomorrow. When I started 20 years ago, there were a number of organizations that did what we do. Two of them that were very prominent couldn't make it go. They went bankrupt. They for a variety of reasons. They were good organizations with achieving good things, but they weren't able to keep it going. Things changed, and that was the end of it. And that happens. And so I think one always has to ask oneself that question is our model viable? Is it still viable? It was viable 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 1 year ago. Is it viable now, and is it viable in the near future? And you ask those questions when you're thinking of extending your lease on a warehouse in Atlanta or Minnesota or something. So I think that's the second question, is always to ask that question of viability. Other things are just, I think just predictability is good to the extent that you can, get funding streams that are predictable. Partnerships that are predictable, ongoing relationships, those kinds of things are important. So I guess that would be the third thing, is if you can build some level of predictability into your model, it'll be helpful for you. Last but not least is luck. I think it was said about a Napoleonic general once that he was lucky, and usually as much as we want to connect so much with our skill, sometimes you have to be lucky in this business, and of course with the understanding that sometimes we make our own luck. You got to be good to be lucky, but there is an element of luck to it, and taking advantage of luck. When good fortune comes to you, you take advantage of it. So sometimes luck comes to those who are ready to receive the luck.
Well, I love what you said about it's the harder way is not always the better way. Ask how it's easy, and even down to the luck, But I think it takes a lot of intentionality as a leader to use that influence as a force for good, to center your business on a common mission and values and all of that. So I did want to touch on, and we'll come back to the complexity of your operations because I think that's important. But you talked about the part of getting your partners aligned, your stakeholders aligned, getting your board aligned so that you could have good stewardship over your finances and how you use the gifts of talent and time and resources that come your way, whether it's luck or intentionality. So talk to me about how you've been able to do that successfully and really nurture the thing that you've cultivated with all of those various stakeholder groups.
Yeah, well, our board is really good. We work closely with the African diaspora, and our board, about half of our board is members of the African diaspora, and they bring important things to the table. Every board member needs to bring something to the table. And so whether it's knowledge of Africa and connections, whether it's money, whether it's, delivering books because of a relationship or, being a CEO of a book company or being an attorney, everybody on the board delivers something. And that's, I think, important. I think it's also important that there be camaraderie with the board, that they feel a sense of kinship with the mission, and that they enjoy the mission. Is our board members like to go to meetings because they're fun. They find them enjoyable. The topics are, the work that we're doing is enjoyable, and the camaraderie with the people is important. And I think that's important with staff. I think that's important with board, and I think that's important with donors. So, an event like this that we're having in about an hour here at this warehouse is a donor warehouse party, and it is a party. And so the donors and the volunteers and the board and some staff and board members will be here. And everybody just sort of interacts, and good things always happen, I find. When you build excitement with any organization, good things always happen. That's true with any organization I've been connected with.
I really love what you said there about, first of all, how often do you hear that board meetings are fun?
Yeah.
Not many leaders can claim that with their board. My family and I just recently went to see the Savannah Bananas baseball team, and they're all about putting on a show and making it fun. And lo and behold, they won the championship in their league this year.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an important thing to remember in business, that it doesn't always have to be serious. You have a serious mission, but you got to have fun. You got to have community. You got to have a sense of stakeholder engagement, that everybody is tied into the mission, that they value one another, and that you as a leader are valuing your board and the insights that they bring versus trying to commandeer all the decisions and the relationships. And so I think that's a really important lesson learned.
Yeah. Well, the Books for Africa warehouse band will play today, and how many warehouses have a band? We
right.
say we have the best warehouse band in the business, and so the members of the band are staff here, and they are very good musicians in their own right, and that is something that gets them here too. And oh, by the way, in Minnesota, we also have a Books for Africa warehouse band for the Minnesota warehouse, which also builds excitement and camaraderie. So fun is good for mission.
That is great. I love the idea of building bands within your organization. I do want to go back to the complexities that you face. So while you're having fun, while you're seeking easy solutions, the reality is that the logistics and the scale in which you're shipping 3.2 to 4 million books over the next year, that is complex and complicated. So what are some of the biggest challenges you've had with the logistics, the operations that you've had to overcome and that you're working on today?
Well, these are trying times. They're unusual times. Things are happening in the logistics world that have never happened before. A container will leave our warehouse and we'll be informed shortly thereafter, we couldn't get it to the port by train because the train was full or something like that. Highly unusual things, and then bills coming in that we haven't seen before, that kind of thing. And so, we're just sort of making it up as we go along. But for us, we've kind of always looked at that, the idea of making things up as we go along, and changing as need be. So these are some of the greatest logistical challenges I think that anyone has seen in many, many decades. And so, but we just sort of keep clunking along, to use the technical term. And this year, our goal is to send more books than we've ever sent before, 4 million books. And so far, so good. We're on track to do that. You just have to, I think, look at these things and operate within the environment that you're in and say, okay, here's how it's going to go. Here's what we need to do to achieve our goal, and you move ahead with that. Some of the way to do that, I remember the first days when I came into Books for Africa, I was pleased to learn that there were these things called freight forwarders. And so, for example, Vector is our key freight forwarder, although we work with a few others. And the idea is to work with, again, to make things easy. If you work with a freight forwarder, they do a lot of things so I don't need to. So it's like outsourcing. So by outsourcing or tapping into conventional logistics systems that the for-profit world is tapping into, the same as us, you're able to make things easier by tapping into a service, and then you don't need to hire as many people, you hire a service.
So you've shared a little bit about these ambitious goals to grow from 3.2 to 4 million books, and you're on track to do it, which is awesome. You talked to me a little bit about the leadership lessons you've had around finding balance and keeping kind of a conscious culture, and you want to push people to a certain degree, but they also need to find that balance. Your 15 people, your volunteers, everybody. How do you kind of balance that as a leader with these, big, hairy, audacious goals, with the reality that people need the breaks for mental health and kind of the weight of culture as it lies on leaders of businesses today?
Yeah, I mean, to send 4 million books is strenuous, but I think to some extent we build on our successes, so we know we can send 3.2 million books. And, we have good staff, and to work with them and say, hey, how can we do this? I think by bringing in staff and board and others to get their input and their volunteers of like, okay, if that's indeed our goal, how would we do it? Because it is our goal and we do want to do it. So, the old issue of theoretically, if we do the thing we say we want to do, how would we do it? Sometimes you have to ask yourself that question. But I always say, we're going to give it our best shot. If we don't do it, we don't do it. I mean, we're going to give it our best shot, and I think we will do it. And we've achieved other goals, and we'll achieve this goal. I think it's complicated because you have finance, you have logistics, you have staffing, you have other factors, public visibility. All of those things are juggled. The goal is to be able to sleep at night, to sleep well. When I first started this job, I didn't know a lot of stuff, and also the finances were tighter, and the organization was smaller. So actually, it's easier to run a slightly larger organization, or slightly larger. We were a $500,000 cash organization then. We're about $3 million now, so it's considerably larger. Still a small organization as far as these things go. But, when you get a little bit larger, you can rely on staff. You can rely on systems, fundraising systems. You can just have other people. It's not all on you. It still requires, you don't want to crash the plane, especially if it's a bigger plane. But I think there's more fail-safes built in and safety valves in a system like that. Things like financial reserves that can help you.
Wonderful point. So you've been at this for 20 years. There's a lot of things that you can say now that you're probably very proud of, the way that you've grown as you should be. If you look back one day when you've wrapped up this journey of leading this organization and you look at your whole body of work, what's your greatest hope for the impact that it will have had and that you can be proud of?
My greatest hope is that we will have been able to make a difference with the people in Africa who are reading these books. I've been a great reader my whole life, and the few books really were transformational for me. And, in all these millions of books that we will send this year alone, they're transformational books for other people. And so those recipients in Africa will maybe be future presidents of their countries, leaders of their countries, teachers, running businesses in their countries, feeding their families, and improving their lives. And I'm a great believer in education as a preventative goal that prevents problems like hunger, overpopulation, environmental degradation, all kinds of problems that are very important and need to be addressed. For me, education is a way to prevent problems before they occur. So hopefully we're helping prevent problems in the future by what we're doing here today.
Yeah, love the future vision. It's all about generational impact, leaving this world in a better place than where we found it. We are all mere mortals, newsflash. So Thank you for the wonderful work that you're doing. If people wanted to follow, support you online, go learn more, follow your leadership, where would you direct them?
Yeah, I would welcome people to go to booksforafrica.org, or they can email us as well. But booksforafrica.org, we put a lot of good information on Facebook, too, so go to our Facebook page. A lot of pictures of volunteers and container deliveries, videos. Our website is, there's some things in there that are kind of unique. You can donate funding to a specific project in a specific country if you want. And some countries have multiple projects, and some people will start projects, and we put them on the website. So you can just donate money. That's great, and we appreciate it. Or you can donate to a specific project, and or you can help us get find books. We need to find 4 million books this year, and so we need help with all of that.
There's a lot of ways to help, and all those resources we'll include on our website, chatwithleaders.com, in the show notes. Pat, thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Jeff.
Today. Really
Appreciate it.
you.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to our warehouse.